Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the fourth in our series for campus operations. This webinar is Optimizing Utilities, Digitally Transforming Network Management. And really excited to have Mary Colomayo here from Cornell, as well as two members of Esri's utilities team. And we're going to be walking through a number of great demonstrations and content that starts to look at how utilities can start to leverage GIS. So just to start off, a little bit of housekeeping. If you have any questions or any comments, please just drop them into the chat box. Again, your mics are going to be muted for the majority of this time. There's no cameras on your side. So if you have any questions, we've got people that are monitoring them, and we'll have some pauses during the presentation to be able to take questions as well. There'll be a Q&A session at the conclusion of the webinar as well, so we'll hold some time. So if you have questions that you put in, just drop them into the chat box at any point, and we'll get to them at the end of the session or in the meantime as we take a couple little breaks. The webinar, the recording, and the slides will be available after this session, so we'll post those to a common place where we've hosted all the other ones. There'll also be a survey following the webinar. And I've said this after each webinar, so sorry for those of you that have heard me say this every time, but the survey is really important for us to guide, the content not only for these sessions, but ones in the future. So please let us know if this has been helpful and other content that you'd like to see. So this is the fourth webinar in our series. If this is the first one that you're seeing, that's fine. You can easily go and grab the recordings of the slides for any of the other sessions, and we'll drop a link into the chat box so you can get access to all that material. And so through this whole series, we worked from getting started to an indoor session, a mobile workforce session, and now wrapping it up with utilities. And as I said, if you have ideas, if you want to keep engaging with us for ideas in the fall or ideas in the spring, certainly please reach out through the survey or just directly to me. So the outline for today is going to do a quick introduction on network management with GIS and what that starts to mean in terms of moving from either CAD or moving from paper workflows. Following that, we're going to have Jinjie, a solution engineer from Esri, doing a demonstration of how you can start to really more of a get started approach for modeling and visualizing your network information. And in this case, we're going to look at fiber data. Following that, we're going to look at how Mary Colomayo from Cornell has really started to publish out her information and make it available across the campus, and some of the ways that she has taken GIS and really helped to transform the university there. Following that, Tom DeWitt's going to walk us through district heating and district cooling. And specifically, this is going to be with the utility network. So what does that mean? What is some of the functionality that you get with the utility network? And why is it something that utilities, as well as universities that are operating in this space, something that they're starting to look at? Following that, going to do our resources, so a couple links to be able to get access to content, as well as the Q&A at the end of the session. So I've had this slide in a couple of the other sessions, but I've changed it up here to really reflect what some of the main challenges are to universities in the space related specifically to utilities. And I wanted to highlight just three of these that I see as kind of some of the major challenges that people have been facing. The first one I wanted to say is this idea of aging assets. And this is not related just to obviously the university space. It's related to utilities across the world. If we look at Philadelphia, if we look at New Orleans, or if we look at campuses that have been in place for 100 years, 150 years, in some places there are water mains, there are assets, there are even electrical components that have maybe been in the ground for 40, 50, 60, 70 years. And so a lot of these things are end of life or over end of life. Where are these assets? What kind of information or questions can you start to ask of this data to better understand the risk in your campus? And GIS is a great way to start asking those questions. Another one is workforce turnover. I've spoken to a lot of people on the utility side as well as on the university utility side, and there's this idea that a lot of the workforce that you have in place right now, a lot of this information exists in their heads for where things are located or where that valve is to do that isolation. And so rather than letting those folks retire and leave with all that information in their heads, How can we start to capture that information and now make it available to people across the university? And the last one is this data silos or outdated information. Information today probably exists in Excel, it exists in CAD, it exists on paper maps. How can we start to take all those disparate sources of data and get them into one easy to use, easy to access location? Some of the other workflows that I see specific to GIS for campus utilities and the ways that GIS can start to address some of those common problems that we just looked at. The first one really being just, where are my assets? Rather than a CAD sheet or rather than paper maps where you're looking at maybe just one small area or a building footprint, we can start to ask questions of the entire campus or the entire area of what kind of assets and where are they, and also get these to people on mobile devices. So make it a lot easier to get to and access this information. And the next step that we're going to start to look at is not only being able to visualize things, the where question, but start to ask questions of the data. How old are these pipes or valves? Where are there unsafe conditions, related to age, related to manufacture? Where is water loss occurring? Active construction, where are the projects? Even starting to share this information with local community or other stakeholders. And then lastly, real time. In this case, real time voltage. This could be real time pressure. Being able to feed information from a real time system into the GIS and do that type of integration so you can see not only where things are, but information related to, real time statuses, as well as asking questions of the data if it's historical asset information. So GIS, as we just said, has been used a lot in this asset and data management area. But it's not just asset and data management. I want to make sure that we don't just speak to that one silo of how GIS can be used. It can be used to help get information out to more stakeholders. And one of my favorites is the field operations angle. So rather than holding all this information on a desktop and having it siloed away, we can start to get data very easily into the hands of more stakeholders. If it's regulatory compliance, when we're asking those questions or we need to develop those reports, very simply being able to run a tool or have a dashboard that can just present those numbers and present those metrics for us that give us diameter, that give us miles of main, and that put all that information into one easy to use spot. And it's not just about these workflows, it's about the change that has also come to the industry. And I'm sure a lot of you out there have seen these things coming into play as well. And the ones I wanted to highlight were this asset tracking. We mentioned the age of pipes, the age of assets. GIS can be used to start better answering some of those questions and help address those problems that you might start to see. Also, the connectivity. We can visualize our pipes, you can visualize the system, but I want to understand the flow. I want to understand how the connectivity of these actual devices and these assets are going to impact customers or impact the performance on the network. And so what I wanted to pivot to and what we're going to talk about through the webinar is this idea of network management 1, 2, 3. So the first thing we're going to start with is a very simple and easy approach for getting started with network management. And the way that I'm going to frame this, we're going to have Jinjie walk through a demonstration, is data management for ArcGIS Online. And this is going to be visualization tools and resources that you can use to quickly get running and quickly start sharing and getting information out there. The number 2 of our 1, 2, 3 is the utility network. If you don't know what that is yet, don't worry. We're going to have Tom run through a demonstration and show visually what exactly this is. And the 2 of this means it's local. It's on a file geodatabase. It's something that one person can run on a machine and get a connected network in place. And the number 3 is for the more advanced users and for the audience that wants to take this to a more enterprise approach. What we mean here is having the utility network, connectivity, and advanced tracing, advanced analysis available to your entire enterprise as services. And so we're going to be walking through this 1, 2, 3 approach with Jinjie, with Mary, with Tom to show that you can get started today with network management in GIS, and there's a lot of value you can get, and you can also start to move towards more advanced workflows as well. And so with that, let me turn it over to Jinjie. So I just passed the control over to you, Jinjie, and you should be good to go to share your screen.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian. So Esri's main purpose is to build tools that help you to do your work better. So in the last few years, we've been here to help building geo-enabled systems, which take components of the GIS technology that we provide and build those standalone and independent applications. To incorporate that with the complete workflow with the focus on the organization's objectives and goals. So with that combination of all this work that we've been doing, we built a geospatial cloud for our users. And today we want to showcase a new solution as a service. It's a SaaS offering with ArcGIS solutions. The infrastructure data management for ArcGIS Online, it's leveraging the power of ArcGIS Online, obviously. And it's also a one-click deployment process that the solution could be deployed directly to your organization right away. So we've been listening really close to our users. We keep our bonding really strong. We have built that solution with industry knowledge and practice, with components that help you manage your network from scratch. So along with this solution, it comes with pre-configured user groups with permission setup, some hosted data layers with a simplified information model, depends on which utility or telecom that we're managing, a suite of desktop, web, and mobile app maps, along with those web applications, pre-canned, and dashboard. And with all that being said, everything could happen in just around 30 seconds. And let's take a look at it in action, actually. So let me share my screen on my tablet real quick. And let me switch to my tablet. All right, unlocking it. Awesome. So now what we're seeing is on the tablet. And I'm going to start with one of the asset package, kind of providing on the map asset collector map. I'm going to go into my field asset collector map.
Hey,
By
sorry,
zooming in
JJ,
here,
it's got the sharing for the I think Zoom is up right now, so it's not showing your screen yet.
got you. Awesome. So let me do it again real quick. Sorry about that.
No worries. Cool.
Okay,
Yeah, we got
so
it up
back
now.
to
Awesome.
our field maps. Awesome. So what we're looking at right now is actually our Redland campus in California. We have some existing network that's already been pre-built and digitized on the map. So if you zoom in, you could click on all the detailed information and look at all the information. So today, I'm going to be one of the few crew member going out and start helping our network engineers to finish the design and provide some feedback from the field to be their eyes in the field. First start with, I will zoom in a little bit right here. I'm going to place a new pole at this location. To do so, you just simply click on one of the feature set that we have collected here and update that feature. Along with the attribute, you can start pulling in a lot of different information, and that attribute table is fully configurable by users, so feel free to modify all those. And you could take a picture actually with whatever information that you could take to provide more details to the engineer. Once that's done, what I'm going to do is to sketch up a little bit more information and tell them the routing options from the field. To do so, I'm going to switch over and start adding a different asset right here, which is called the aerial span. For that, I'm just going to save us some time. I'm going to add that point and without taking any attachment or pictures. Just to complete that, what I'm going to do is do a copy right from the first asset point to the next pole down the road. As you see, this process is so easy to complete. And once everything was done on the tablet from the field, now we could transition back into our desktop environment and take a look at the rest of the apps that we're offering real quick. So let me stop sharing real quick in here from Zoom. And let's switch to our content. So right here, what we're looking at is actually our online environment with all the information and the information model layers being deployed in that location. We're going to show some example today. One will be the editor applications. So simply just zoom in. Now you can see all the information we have collected from the field are showing up right now on the map itself. By clicking through all the information, you do see the detailed collection of the attributes being shown up here, along with that attachment of the picture that I just took. Furthermore, as a network engineer using the pre-configured templates, now I'm ready to build in that small fiber access cable all the way from that distribution hub down the road to the access terminal. So all this process could be done just via that web browser kind of experience. So it's very simplified workflow to be implemented, and it's ready right now at your fingertip. Once you have completed all your design and collection from the field, we have one dashboard that captures all the metrics behind the scene and tell you about the story of the network right now. It includes the network footages and also the count of different equipments we have prepared on the high level. So for some users that really want to go to the next level and look for more detailed information, we have one more app right here called the Viewer. Here, using the screening tool to start drawing a small area just to understand how it's going with the bill of material on a high level, you can have a return of results of a very comprehensive list of data behind it. Every single feature is being collected here. So every process, what we show here is very smoothly. So today we have taken a quick look at the new solution offering, and we're confident that university campus facility could take full advantage to start digitize a transformation of digital transformation with geospatial cloud. And let's hear more about it. So back to the team right here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, JJ. So first, Angie, are there any questions for JJ before I jump on to kind of summarize some of the demo and the...
Yeah, so one question, can this be deployed to our own portal through ArcGIS Enterprise rather than through ArcGIS Online, or is it online only?
That's an awesome question. So it's easy. So once you sign in to ArcGIS solution site, simply just use your ArcGIS Enterprise login, and that solution will be ported directly to your your enterprise environment.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks.
So the part there that I wanted to sum up, JJ, thanks so much for the demonstration. That was awesome. Is really that number one of, network management 1, 2, 3. So it's the data model, getting that in place. So what we provide is a data model that you can get up and running, easy to use, as well as editing tools. There's also this idea of the visualization and analysis to be able to get this hosted up on the web and mobile and get reports up and running and easy to use. And then the other one is this ability of accessing and locking down the way that people can get to that information with roles, as well as having it up in ArcGIS Online, or as JJ just said, ArcGIS Enterprise. So this is the number one. And as he said, it's literally, again, it's going to be time to build out the data model or modify it and move your data over. But to stand this up with the solutions he just saw and get those templates in place is literally about 60 seconds to just hit the button and then get everything deployed. So next up, and similarly in that kind of along that same strategy, Mary has not deployed these exact solutions because they have the 145er was just released a week ago, but it's a similar story around moving your information from a number of different places to get it to be a simple visualization and get information out to people in a easy to use and easy to digest format. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Mary, and really excited to have you share with everybody the journey you guys have been on at Cornell.
Thanks. Can y'all see my screen? Oops, hold on here.
Yep.
I went to the last slide, I'm sorry. There we go. Well, thanks so much, Brian. I appreciate you inviting me to come and speak and be able to talk to everything that we've been working on here at Cornell. So again, I'm Mary Calamayo. I am the Utility Mapping Program Manager within Facilities and Campus Services at Cornell University. That is a mouthful of a title, and it never gets any shorter. I've been with Cornell for about 4 years. And when I was interviewing to come on board with this team, they said, well, this is primarily a microstation shop, but what would your approach be to converting converting this to ArcGIS Online. And my question was, well, what are the reasonings behind that, and what does the data look like? So it's hard to really to come up with this idea on the spot, but once you look at the data as a whole, it's a lot more real, and it's a lot more, the path is a little more clear. So some of my primary responsibilities are main management of the data and the distribution of this data to the utility management folks. That includes photos, that includes survey information. We do utility locating, as-built documents, and record sharing. So there's quite a lot of information coming in and out of this office to provide to everybody doing the work at Cornell. I'm also super fortunate that I get to manage the drone program at Cornell. So the image that you're seeing here, I actually took a couple weeks ago during a flyover of campus. So this, there's a lot happening here, both in the traditional mapping sense, but also in a lot of the products that Esri does offer. So we really try to utilize everything as much as we can. So the question, like I said, is why would we want to go down this road of converting everything from what the current environment that it's in to a different platform, let alone to an Esri platform? So Cornell has 12 distinct utility networks, and that is a lot more than most places have. Most folks probably have 1 or 2 to manage, or possibly 3. And so 12 creates this really unique situation where there is just so much data. And for us, especially, that each utility has its own associated information, both in map form, but both in what we call books, which is primarily data that lives in Excel. And so if something needs to be updated, the map has to be updated, the asset has to be changed in the map, but then anywhere else that it exists in an Excel format needs to also be updated. So it creates this long chain of information that needs to be updated and brought to the folks on the back end that use this information to make decisions, both from a distribution standpoint and from a financial standpoint. And that data, because it lives in Excel and because the maps currently exist in this, this other format, it's not accessible. There's no connection that we have set up right now to provide this information. And so right now, the way we have it set up, there's a very small number of people that have the ability to edit the maps. But the group of end users that need to receive this information on a daily basis is much larger. And so the problem then becomes, how do we create an environment in which the small group of users can effectively edit the maps and keep things up to date while providing instantaneous or close to instantaneous updates for the field, so that they can make these decisions on the fly or in the middle of the night, or planning for the future? How do we create this data chain, both in a desktop and in a mobile environment? So just to give you some quick background, currently, and in the long interim, we are using Bentley MicroStation. I don't know if everyone is familiar with this, so I just want to do a quick rundown of it. So Bentley MicroStation is a CAD-based platform, which is primarily used for drafting in 2D and 3D design. You'll see this typically in architects and engineering shops. It is used, but it is less common from my experience with utilities. I don't necessarily work with utility-specific folks in the mapping world, so it's a lot of my experiences in higher education, and a lot of my cohorts and colleagues are in higher education planning and art, planning and design. So I know my experience is a little bit different, but like I said, you don't typically see this. And when we transitioned back in the early 2000s from paper maps to digital maps, our engineering shop was a MicroStation shop. And so it was a natural choice to say, well, this is what we're familiar with. This is what we're all used to. Let's move to this, and let's create this as our main mapping platform. And that was great. That it totally was effective. They did a really good job. But as time has gone on and as technology has progressed, it creates this environment in which the map is a 2D flat file. There is no asset information currently behind that. There's the ability to do that. We have in the past, but currently we don't have it set up that way. And it really, as people have moved on from MicroStation, it's become where only 3 of us out of the 30 people that used to use MicroStation, there's only 3 of us left in this environment. And so it's the larger conversation again of, where do we want this to go? What direction are we headed in? So here's just a quick snapshot for you of the Bentley MicroStation map. This is an area of campus. This is the street light. And so you're going to look at this one, which the asset number you can see on the screen. So that exists in the map, the line work exists in the map, and the symbology exists in the map. But if you were to click on this, nothing would happen. There's no information behind that. You really don't know anything about this. And so you have to go off and you have to look in either a different platform or into the Excel sheet and try to locate this information and track it down. So elsewhere within facilities and campus services, we are actively using the ArcGIS Enterprise platform. You know, as we're all familiar, it's a GIS software product across numerous industries, as we all well know, especially if you've attended the rest of this webinar series. I am fortunate enough that when I joined Cornell, a colleague of mine was already standing up this entire environment. So I didn't have to worry about setting up a geodatabase. I didn't have to set up Portal or ArcGIS Online. I was able to take advantage of the fact that it already existed. But since I've been on board, we've been able to grow and develop this entire platform as a unit, as a brain trust is the word we like to use. So now we've transitioned to a fully on-prem Portal service as well as an ArcGIS Online environment. And what that does is that not only gives us the ability to have desktop users and desktop editors, but a fully mobile unit in which we can have complete data synchronization. So we can send out interns, we can send out ourselves if we want to, and go out and be completely free from the desktop to do editing, just like JJ showed you in the previous presentation. So this is the same exact area that we looked at before, and here's one of the assets you saw before. And so now in the ArcGIS Online mobile setup that I have created for a survey, when you click on this, not only do you get the asset information, but I can tell you the fixture type, I can tell you the type of pole that it is, I can tell you the pole color, and that previously did not exist in the map. It existed elsewhere, but once you marry these two data sources together, you create a map package that allows you to make better decisions. So if you could run an analysis and say, show me all the streetlights that aren't LED, and then you could come up with a plan to then transition all of those over to LED. And so it just gives one more layer of data and analysis that we didn't currently have. So this is still an ongoing project. I said when I started that this would take 9 months. My colleagues that are on this call will laugh because it's been 4 years of us working on this project together. And the reason is, how are we going to get this accomplished? And the first thing is a data inventory. You don't know what you don't know. And so over the years, as we've been going through this project, we've done a massive data inventory. We've looked at all the information and said, okay, what is truly important? What do we care about and what do we want to show on these maps? And what is extra? What is a project from 15 years ago that we're holding on to this information, but we don't really need, or it's not relevant anymore? And so just cleaning things out and creating a setup and saying, this is the clearest picture of everything that we want to have shown on this map. We've also had the ability to reconfigure and redevelop our Esri setup because, you know, we've gone from having one primary user and a handful of end users to not only is our planning office now on the enterprise level, but obviously our utility network is moving to the enterprise level. Our campus police is on the enterprise level. We have other units around the university that are all coming together onto this platform. And so we've had the really great opportunity to push this system to the limit. Our IT folks might be a little angry at that phrase, but we've broken things and we've fixed them, and we've pushed this system to where it can fit us and where we can be the best possible enterprise database and our enterprise setup. And you know, with the data inventory, with the flexing of all these systems, creates a QA/QC of all this data. With 12 utility networks, there is a lot of data to QA/QC. Everything that has to be brought over, even though the data integrity is the same, just a visual run through of everything that you've put in is important. Because again, it allows you to look at the data as a whole and say, do I really care about this? Do I care about this survey that's attached to this from 20 years ago? Is this data still relevant? Does it match with information that currently exists on the map? And so because of that QA/QC process, I've been able to and have been required to create a streamlined outflow for the output of all this data, because previously all this information was connected to an Oracle database, which when you convert from CAD to a geodatabase, it puts 47 rows of zeros. And that was an interesting problem to have, because how do you streamline that process so that every single time you output this data, you don't have to manually go through and delete everything? And so that's been really great to be able to use Model Builder and to really cut this process down to just a matter of minutes. Actually, Friday, I recut all of my data. It took about 2 hours for 12 systems. So that is just a fantastic hurdle, because it used to take hours and hours of my time to work through each tool. And really, Brian mentioned this, the connection to other systems. Are we ready to move to a network in which we can put all of our systems into the map? Probably not, but it's nice to know that we're creating an environment in which that opportunity is there. So I mentioned this model builder. Here is one of my models that brings all of my data over. So over here on the left, you can see this is my original MicroStation file, which we use the .utl extension if you're familiar with MicroStation. That's not really relevant, but it just happens to be the one we're using. And I like to keep all of my data separate off of our file geodatabase up on the enterprise level, just for integrity's sake. And everything gets pushed through this CAD to geodatabase tool, and it goes through and it deletes all of those fields off of here. And it leaves me with these clean, streamlined files that are essentially just the layer information and any attributes that were attached. And so that allows me to continually work through my data and make sure that I am looking at and working with the most up-to-date environment. And once this data is clean, eventually we could go through and run a topology tool to make sure that every single line is connected to every single valve, which will get us ready to transition to the utility network. But we're not at a place where we're ready for that. Right now, it's more focused on how do we take what we had, which is functional, but it's not the best system that we could possibly have, and how do we move it to this new environment to provide the best possible maps? How do we provide mobile data synchronization to all these non-GIS end users? And so it's been a really interesting 4-year journey. I don't know if you saw the presentation from last time with Harvard, but a lot of us within the higher education cohort, we try to connect with each other. So I've provided my information here. I would love to talk to you more offline and learn from what you're doing, but also if you have questions or you want to learn more about what I'm doing, this is an ongoing journey. And if you had 2 utilities, you might be able to do this in a year easily. You could get started right away. I mean, with everything that they've talked through today. But it's just me. So to do 12 utility networks and to get everything transitioned over has definitely taken a lot longer than I had anticipated, but we're getting there. We are really pushing the system to the limit, and we're trying to create the best environment that we possibly can. And Esri has really had our backs in helping us get there. So I appreciate the time, and Brian, thank you so much for inviting me on here. I appreciate it.
Awesome. No, thanks so much, Mary. I think the 2 things I just wanted to add there is thanks so much for putting your email on. I mean, a big part of this, as I've said a bunch of times, is trying to build community and trying to pull people together. So certainly, if it's reaching out to Mary, if it's reaching out to me, if it's reaching out to, if you had an interest in reaching out to one of the other presenters that you saw, just let us know and we can try to pull people together. I mean, that's really a big part of this. The other thing I thought was awesome too is just, yes, it is just you and you have been able to do a ton. It's like, yes, you want to do more and get further, but you've been able to do a lot of stuff. And I love that idea of, I think JJ said it too, of just being able to ask questions in the information, and
Absolutely.
The difference there between the street lights on the one side and then in the GIS is like, you can ask some questions really simply of the data and start to understand it better.
Absolutely.
Angie, any questions come in for Mary?
Oh, absolutely. Definitely have people that are interested in connecting with Mary after the session. But the question we can take for now is a comment or question. The biggest challenge I found when attempting to move utilities data to GIS is to get people to sit down with me and get the information out of their heads. Any tips on how you've been doing that?
So like I said, this is a massive system. This is a legacy system. They've been doing that process essentially for 30 years, or not 30, excuse me, 20 years at this point. So the biggest thing that I have found useful is to, chunk it up by utility. So if you're having this problem with your water distribution manager, sit down with them and say, okay, this is my map. This is the data that I own. Absolutely, I am responsible for this. But at the end of the day, This is your information. You are just as responsible for it as I am. How can we work together to put all this data together? I have also found that create it. So if you have, again, we'll use water. If you're doing water valves, get all your water valves on a map, give them the basic identifiers that you have, and then sit down and say, okay, what data do we need to have associated with this? Here's your mobile data platform. Here's a web browser. You don't even have to know how to use ArcGIS. Go into the website and just fill out the information. And that kind of puts it back on their hands saying, I'm responsible for providing you this service, but you're responsible for providing me with this data. And I think that creating that environment and saying, we are all responsible for this responsibility. I keep saying it because it is with the legacy information like that, it is important because once these people are gone, they're gone. And it's really difficult sometimes to get them to come back in or to just to sit down and say, tell me about this. I don't understand. So build it and they will come, I think is the expression that you could use here. But again,
I don't know
like
if the Field of Dreams slide to pull up for you, Mary, so it would have been a good transition. But.
Right. But yes, like I said, and if you have more, if you come up with the magical key, though, I would love to know because as I work really closely with the guys that I work with, we're all a great cohort, but it is difficult sometimes to just get people to sit down and to clear their plate and say, please focus on this with me and please help me because I'm trying to help you. So. And that's why, like I said, we all need to connect and work together on this because I think we're all working towards the same common goal.
Awesome. Yeah, Mary, I'm sorry to pull this question, keep going with it, but the idea of just getting them information in front of them. I mean, I've always said the same thing of like, don't wait until you have perfect information. Get what you have to people, and then they can help you, edit and build it and grow too. And even as JJ showed, a simple configuration in a mobile device like that, it's like get them what we call like a map notes application, or they can say, hey, this is wrong, or this poll's, in the wrong spot. So that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Cool. So with that, Mary, thank you so much again. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Tom DeWitt. So Tom's been on working with Esri for I think 75 years or so, and has a wide array of experience. He's basically the mastermind behind our gas network and a lot of the design there. And he's really started to move into the district heating and cooling space, and he's been doing a lot of really great work there. So with that, and after embarrassing Tom, just pass the buck over to you, Tom. So feel free to start sharing.
All right, thank you. And there you go. That's what we want. We're sharing, Brian?
Yep. Yeah, I see that. See ArcGIS Pro should be good to go.
All right, that's the right screen then. That's good. All right.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you, Brian, for that introduction. It was a little over the top, but that's all right. So what I want to talk about is on this progression network management 1, 2, 3 of building on top of what JJ and Mary talked about. And so they showed some great examples, great discussions on how to get the individual components that make up your utility system into the GIS so that you can see and visualize the entire system and understand that. What I want to talk about is with the utility network, how we take that up a notch and we start talking about how to understand how these components work together to deliver the energy, the telecommunication, whatever the particular utility is, to deliver it to the end users. So on my screen here, what I've got to start with is, it looks really simple, but it is a first introduction to thinking about the utility as a system. So for engineers and planners, this is where my heart and soul is that's the ability to say, that first question of when, and I'll use my steam and chilled water system as an example, when it leaves the plant, where does it go? Right? It's going out there somewhere. So it's nice to be able to just click and see a graphical representation of the entire extent of your pipe system that this particular energy goes to, and to see some summarizations about this pipe system. So here I'm looking at my hot water system, and I can see some characteristics of it, its length, its volume, How much of that is considered to be transmission pipe, distribution pipe? What is supply? What is return? And then there's summary of the components, right? Give me the pumps, the heat exchangers, the controllable valves. That's great. But even down here in this other part of my campus, I can see in the just different colors without even zooming in and anything. I can see the extent of this particular steam system, covers that half of the campus. I can see that. And over here, I've got another steam system and a chilled water system. There's two of them there stacked on top of each other, showing me that. That's great. We're starting to think about this as a system. And if I zoom in a little bit, let me go ahead and I'm going to zoom in just a little here. And we're going to switch from looking at our pipe system a little bit further. There we go. Now we're getting a little more detailed. Instead of looking at where does all the energy go, my whole system, now I'm looking at pressure zones. And I can see this blue one over here, get over the way there. And I see the characteristics, some summarization about that pressure zone. All of these are great beginnings. We're just getting started here. High level understanding of how the components work as a system. But when we bring all this together, we got to think about details. And we can go from this high level view to a very detailed view. Like for example, up here, I've got this heat plant up here in the north, and I'll just go ahead and zoom in really tight. And we can start to see kind of the opposite of what I just showed you. We started with a really simple view, high level, the whole campus. Now I'm looking at inside a single building, right? A schematic view of my boilers over here. And as Mary pointed out, all these components have a lot of information behind them. And so I can see whatever information it is that I have about that boiler. Okay, that's great, but keep in mind that this detail is connected to the greater system. It's all one pipe system. That's how you built it. That's how you maintain it. And that's how the software understands it. Now, let me give you an example of that. I'm going to do a trace. And one of the interesting things about, here we go, I'm going to start right there. One of the interesting things when we talk about managing steam, chilled water, heated water, is that the flow of the energy is not necessarily the same as the flow of the water. So the energy can go places the water necessarily doesn't. And I'll show you that here. So I'm going to run this trace. We're going to start from here in the plant. We're going to trace out and basically ask the question, when this energy leaves the plant, where does it go? Well, it goes all the way out and it comes back. Right? I'm seeing this kind of loop here, even within the plant. And if I zoom out, with the utility network here, I'm going to see highlighted just about the entire heated water system, including coming over here. There we go. I see more of that. And if I zoom in on this guy right here, right, I'll go ahead and just save the little panning and zooming, get in here real tight. There we go. I see inside this substation where I have a heat exchanger, a whole lot of detail going on here. But the thing I want to point out, give it a second, there we go. My little baby blue highlighted areas, the energy comes in, goes through the heat exchanger, and it goes on out. Okay, now that's important to understand as an engineer. Where does the energy go? But it's also important to understand that the water, and I'll bring up my trace tool for the water flow. Okay, so now I'm going to do from that same place, same start location inside the power plant. I'm going to trace out, but I'm going to leave my screen here so that we can see the difference of what happens when we trace and ask the question, where does the water go? And it's just about done, but you can start to see the difference already. The water came and hit this heat exchanger. Yeah, So right here, I've got a heat exchanger. It's of a type of plate heat exchanger. Okay, so it hit that and said, well, the water can't go through that, but the energy can. But it is connected to a return pipe, so the water basically goes through the heat exchanger and comes back. Also notice over here, this little, why did the trace stop? Because this is a controllable valve on my bypass, and it is set to closed. So my utility network, right, thinking about how these components all work together, understands that when I'm tracing through the pipe system and I come to a device that has its attribute set to closed, that's where I stop the trace. I can't go through that. Okay, so that's really good, really helpful. Now let me go to another example, a little more emergency management example. And I'm going to go over to the other part of my campus. And here I've got a chilled water system and a steam system. And let me go ahead and turn off the steam pipes, clean up the view a little bit. There we go. Now what I want you to notice is in this area, I've got 6 controllable valves on my, in this case, my supply pipe for my chilled water. So let's ask that question of what happens, or maybe more specifically, what do I need to do? I'll place if a break occurs right there at that green dot. Okay, so we've got a water leak or a main break, even worse. And if I come back out here and we look at this, okay, I've got all these valves. Do I close all of them? Well, if I go back out a little bit further, you'll notice a lot of these pipe systems are dead ends. There's nothing connected on the other side. So when I run my isolation trace and I'm asking the software the question, hey, what valve do I need to close? Right? Do I got to close all 6? Or is there a smarter, quicker, right? This is an emergency. We got water spewing all over the place. Got a new fountain in the middle of the courtyard. Don't really want that. What do I got to do? So the software is going to do the trace, and it's going to come back and say, hey, I looked at this, and closing this valve here does nothing because this guy is isolated either way. Same with this one, same with that one. Let's go over here a little bit. Yep, this is a dead end, this is a dead end. So really, of the 6 valves, I only got to close 1, and that isolates the entire system. Closing the others does nothing other than waste time. Okay, so now let's go to the next part of the question, which is, okay, great. Now, who's impacted by this? I'm going to check that little box, run the same trace again. And what this is going to do is it's going to light up everything that's been isolated. Okay, great. I see that. It's all highlighted there, everything that's isolated. And what's important about that is if I come over here to my table of contents and I look down here, I want to open up devices, meters. I have 102 selected meters. Open the table. There we go, it's coming up. Go to the selected records. And give it a second to catch up with me. And there we go. So I now have a list of all the meters which correlate to all the customers that are impacted by this isolation. Think of how fast I identified what valve to close, what valve not to close, and B, here's all the customers who are impacted by this isolation. You now have your contact list. That easy. Okay, now last one to finish this up. When we talk about extra intelligence, Let's keep in mind that even though I'm looking at a 2D view here, let me switch over to my 3D viewer. This is 3D data. Okay, so with this 3D data, I have the ability to, for example, and I love doing this little building here. What's going on around the corner there? Well, let's rotate the view and let's see around the corner, right? Nice 3D view there. And looks like a stadium over there. Let's pan over there. And let's take a look. Looks like there's a plaza there, but my view is kind of blocked. So I'm going to go ahead and there we go. And I'm going to rotate around. There we go. Zoom in a little bit so I can see this plaza area. Okay, that's nice, right? Okay, but you know, where's the pipes? They're underground. Here is my elevation. Let's go underground. -3. What's underground? There's my pipes. And just like Mary talked about, and JJ showed, these are the same pipes I was looking at in 2D. I can interact with them. I can look at them, see that information. That's another aspect of as you're evolving your capabilities, right? We started with JJ showing how just to get it in. Mary talked about just building that inventory of your assets. I'm showing you how to take it the next step. Think of it as a system, your engineers and managers asking those questions about how the system operates. And then this includes looking at it in a three-dimensional view. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Baldwin.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tom. That was great. I'm just going to wrap it and then we'll do questions at the end if there's any questions for Tom. So to wrap this kind of 1, 2, 3, idea of network management, you saw from Jinjie that idea of data management in ArcGIS Online and some of the things you can get there in terms of visualization and data management, getting things to the field. So what Tom showed is really, as he said, that next step and that ability to start asking some more complex questions of your data. And I thought some of the ones he showed were perfect. And one of the ones I hear all the time is obviously where, but the next one is what? You know, what valve do I go to? What is the specific device that I need to get to, neither close or open? So the utility network gives you that functionality of having tracing diagrams, the schematics, being able to go three-dimensionally. And it also lets you model the network at a lot more detailed level. And you saw that by going inside of some of those stations, an ability to start getting that higher level of detail, or as we say sometimes, fidelity. So you don't have to go to this spot, but you have the ability to. So there's a wide range of options depending on the needs at your campus for how you want to start modeling things. And so just to recap these, the number one, data management for ArcGIS Online, the base data model, web and mobile visualization, and editing. For the utility network in a file geodatabase, you have network connectivity, and you have the ability to have that just on a single user desktop. And for those that want to take this to the web and even those traces that Tom just saw, it's possible to do those things from a web or a mobile device. If you want to go to that level, it'd be the utility network in ArcGIS Enterprise. So some of the key takeaways for me from this webinar were where and what. So where are your assets, that ability to use the GIS for that kind of visualization, and then the what, starting to ask those kinds of questions. And so from a web or mobile access side, it's not just having your information tied to a desktop. Starting to ask questions of the data. And you saw, Mary do this as well as Tom. You can start to ask really advanced questions of the data related to flow and, what types of assets are there. Or you can even ask simpler questions of just when was the installation date? What kind of asset is this? The GIS lets you do that at a much grander scale. This idea of network management 1, 2, 3. So I just wanted to make sure that for the audience, it doesn't mean that you can't get started today. There are, as JJ showed, simple things and deployments that you can do in just a matter of seconds to get you started with some of this information management and data collection. So some of the resources that we've been through. So as I mentioned before, this was the last in our series. The recording, the slides will be up. We'll have the link to this in the chat, so please go there and you can get access to any of these other prior webinars. We've got a website that's put together that goes through smart campus operations. There's also a number of resources on this site related to COVID, foundational resources, as well as another, a wider range array of case studies and solutions that are available. So some of the actions, if you're asking yourself, where do I start? What about data quality? What about migration? You just showed me a lot of things. Feel free to just reach out to me, or if you know your account manager, reach out to your account manager and we can get a further conversation set up. In the survey, there's a question in there that says, do you want Esri to contact us? And all that's really asking you is, do you want Brian to send you an email at some point after this webinar? So if you want to have somebody from Reach Out, AKA me, please just check yes, and I can just send you an email and we can have a conversation. If there's any questions or issues you have, this is my direct email. Feel free to reach out. And there's a number of pages and links you can contact us with as well. So we've got a couple of minutes for some Q&A. Again, thank you so much to everybody for attending either this one or the full series. And thank you so much to everybody from the community that's joined to help present. Mary, again, thank you for joining and doing this one. So with that, Angie, do we have a first question that we can take?
Yeah, so a couple people wanting to understand what's available to them now. So I guess the first thing is to clarify the solutions JJ showed. Those are on solutions.arcgis.com, and they're free to anybody. They can be deployed with online and enterprise. Is there a specific solution, or are there different solutions for the different types of utilities?
Great question. To answer that really quickly, yeah, there'll be different solutions per the utility type. So the ones that I'm aware of that are up there right now is a stormwater solution for a stormwater network, as well as the fiber one, which was just pushed up. And I know that they have plans to start releasing a number of others through, this winter into, I believe January, as there'll be a number of other ones rolling out as well. And on the utility network side, there's a wide range of, I don't even know if I can list them all off right now, but in a number of different domains. So if you have a question about getting started, just send us an email and we can get you all those details.
All right, so a next question for Tom. Is there metered data integration in real time? For example, click on a pipe and get the real-time temperature, flow, pressure data. Or is
Yes.
that something? Okay, cool. There is. That's exciting. You want to say more, or is that enough?
No, just leave it. We keep it real simple. Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So another one. Any ROI examples for the very detailed utility networks? So do we have any, user case studies that would talk about the benefits?
Great question. I know we do not have any yet on the university side. I know a few universities that are starting to migrate data over and start testing or proof of concept deployments. So no ROI stories on that side. I know that there's a number of utility case studies. In terms of specific ROI, do you know aware of any, Tom? Or we probably have some just case. Yeah.
What comes to mind that I think is relevant to campuses because of similar size, some of our smaller municipal-oriented type utility systems. And in the case of gas, I can think of a couple of case studies that were done in the last year or so. Austin Utilities in Minnesota, I think Alta Gas up in Calgary come to mind. That Austin particularly, because it's in some ways just a little bit larger than a campus, not much, as a good comparative example of, why did they do this? How did they justify it? Those ROIs.
Perfect.
Yeah, and they're all on our website too, Brian.
Yeah. So if people too, if you had a question about that, or we have it captured who asked, we'll send you some additional details and other case studies. So with that, we're 1 minute over the hour. Again, if we didn't get to a question, we will, reach back out to you and send you a note. So as you close out, you'll have a survey presented. Please fill it out. And again, thank you so much to everybody that's attended. Thank you to the presenters, and thank you so much to the community for helping to support this. Really appreciate it. Have a great day, and happy GIS Day.